Welcome to Manhwa Recap Spoilers. Ahead, watch out, and take care. Hey guys, before the video begins, if you want to support them, channel please subscribe since a lot of you aren't, or if you don't like subscribing, leave a like or a comment. Sorry for the interruption. Raymond. Mumble. A sound like mosquitoes flying around echoes non-stop along the ears. What is this sound? Raymond is my saint? Who's calling me so anxiously? Raymond! No. Listening to it again, it seemed a little angry rather than childish. As the thoughts swirled through my head, the murmur continued to grow louder. As I listened, it sounded like a familiar voice. It was a voice that had faded because I had heard it a long time ago, but it was a voice that definitely existed in my memory. Besides, somehow I felt a little nostalgic for that angry voice. Whose voice was it? That moment, stars flashed in front of his eyes, and Russell jumped to his feet and instinctively shouted, 4! When I open my eyes, I can see the scenery around me. In the foreground is an old sorceress who appears to be in middle age. No prof, and a large green chalkboard, young students sitting sparsely along the perimeter. It was definitely a sight that existed. In my memory, the scene when he attended the academy located in Walker Hill City when he was still a student. No matter how little you catch it, it's been 4 years. Before Russell came to his senses in the dumbfounded situation. The voice that had awakened Russell roared again. No matter how much supplementary classes you doze off during my class. Good guts. Looked him up and down with a twisted gaze, then untied his arms. You don't look like you, but you should be punished the same way I pointed out the classroom with my finger. Please go outside and stand until the lecture is over. Russell, still unable to comprehend the situation, looked around with empty eyes. He lightly pinched his cheek. A tingling sensation that pierces the brain at once. Do you think you are still dreaming? I definitely told you to stay out. As if he didn't like it, the professor with a twisted look warned him once more. Hearing his eyes matched with eyes and a somewhat sad voice, Russell headed out of the classroom. Even in the midst of that, he did not forget to tilt his head. What is this? I must have been touring a museum, thought it was a dream, but it didn't seem like it. The tingling sensation I felt on my cheek was definitely real. Then, is it fantasy magic? What if one of the many items stored in the museum was mixed with the real thing? What if one of them is what gave rise to these fantasies? This kind of fantasy magic is generally characterized by categorizing and showing only the objects in memory. That's why things that can't be remembered in detail are usually implemented in a vague way. Compared to that, what is the view reflected in your eyes now? For example, that stain. The stains in the hallway outside the classroom were unusual, but not something he remembered. It just reminded me of something like that because he saw it. Then, there was one memory that flashed through my mind. At the end of the day, when he was looking at Dragonheart as if possessed in a museum, someone's voice seemed to be faintly heard for that myth. I give you another chance. What Russell paid attention to was the keyword live again, and the sight of the past suddenly unfolded. You said you returned to the past? Time return. To be honest, it's unbelievable, this kind of magic. Can this be called magic? Russell tilted his head and corrected his choice of words. I've never heard of such an incomprehensible existing. But there was no way not to believe it, even if you could deduce the visible result. Denying the result itself was not a virtue that a mage should have. Back to the past. Even by an unknown force. Mysterious power. Come to think of it, the last thing I heard was not one. Besides the voice of one more life, there was definitely another voice. It wasn't long before Russell was able to recall the content of the voice, thanks to his fumbling memory. When the heart meets the eyes and opens another eye, will it not be enough to become the cornerstone of a new myth? Don't you? I guess that's what it meant. Heart and eyes. Speaking of the heart, it must be the heart of the polyp. Then what about the eyes? No way. A thought flashed through Russell, groping his chest. It was the very spot where she always kept her mother's belongings. But doesn't exist. Couldn't feel the touch of the keepsakes my mother left behind. Instead, as if to say, there is only a black band engraved along the middle finger of the left hand where the ring was worn, a tattoo in the shape of a ring made by repeatedly twisting 2 black strings. Also, as guessed, the eyes were the jewels in her mother's keepsakes. Somehow, it looked like a dragon's eye. It was the time when Russell instinctively touched the ring-shaped tattoo, drooling. The classroom door opened. The professor who threw himself out when he raised his head. Professor Hubert. He was looking down at Russell, It's not like you. You fell asleep in class. Is it for fairness as a professor? He added, trying to keep his voice quiet. I think we need a little interview for today, but could you come over to my office during lunch? All right. Since he hadn't finished his thoughts yet, Russell nodded as if he had something more to say. Professor Hubert sighed briefly, but that's all. Then he'll be waiting for you. As he left behind watching him leave, Russell was about to think again. As soon as Professor Hubert gets a little farther away, a palm suddenly appears and strikes Russell on the back of the head suddenly. What kind of dog is this? Are your thoughts disturbed again? Russell, more annoyed by the fact than sick and startled, shook his head. Then he saw 3 academy undergraduates slightly taller than himself, standing there. Age is between 17 and 18 here. This bastard? Didn't you like the way you yelled at yourself? Otherwise, I wonder if I didn't like the eyes wide open. A boy standing in the middle of them twitched his eyebrows. He glanced around, looked around, and growled, not hiding his sneer at Russell. Follow me to the bathroom. This is a baby to eat. And then I walked ahead of my friends and threw them away. It was after he clenched his fists and swung them around as if he would be in trouble if he didn't follow. Russell laughed at the sight. Okay? Something like this happened. I don't know how I got back to the past, but just because you're back in the past doesn't mean you have to live the same life as before. If it did, it would just repeat a life that wasn't much different from the last time, and I had no intention of doing so. He was no longer the Russell he once was. Being in this position is 25-year-old Russell, who has gone through several paychecks and several years of freelancing. Therefore, I don't think there's a need for people like you. The moment he made up my mind. Mission: get out of bullying. Give your 3 bullying classmates a taste suddenly. A translucent window of light suddenly rose into the air. Fire and evil reward, lowest grade magic stone, edible. Is it because I'm not sleeping enough to see something empty? If not, what is this? The translucent green window in front of him was enough to make Russell think. A window I had never seen before in my life. Mission? Compensation? According to the contents that came to my eyes, it seemed to be a story that if the mission was solved, the reward indicated at the bottom would be given, but who? Moreover, what was presented as a reward was the lowest level magic stone, edible. The word lowest attached to the front is a word used to classify an object or object, so even so. Edible magic stone? Hearthstone. Or something called a mana stone literally means a stone containing mana, of course. I've heard that the purity of pure mana goes up rather than stones as you go to the highest level. Even so, the fact that the fundamental shape is that of a stone or a jewel does not change. And the story of using the magic stone for food had never been heard anywhere on the continent. Well, even the savage tribes living all over the continent wouldn't chew stones instead of eating. Among the professors, who was playing a joke. It wasn't a prank that an ordinary undergraduate at the academy would do. But not them professors with enough skills to belong to the Mage Tower must have enough talent to joke around like this. Professor Hubert is one of those people. But soon Russell denied his guess. If you think about it, it didn't make sense. Even if there's nothing to do, professors won't play pranks like this on undergraduates. Even if there was a reason, he wouldn't play a prank on himself to such an extent. Even so, the self at this time was an inferior student who may or may not be able to graduate. That's why he stayed at school and took supplementary classes even during winter break. Supplemental classes were conducted for inferior students with low grades during the vacation period. Is there any way to play a prank on such an inferior student? To roughly guess the timing, it was right before I went up to my graduating class. It seemed to be around the winter break after the 3rd year. Then, the replenishment hasn't been confirmed yet. In terms of age, he had just turned 18. Then there was still a chance at my age I can alleviate this cursed punishment. More than ever. Of course, it would have been nice if he was a little younger. That would be the case, because Russell's method was more effective at a younger age. But, miraculously, he even returned to the past. It must be greed to wish that far. Some time to sink in such a small hope. I don't follow you, and I don't know what you are doing. You're not thinking of running away, are you? You have to hide anyway, but you won't be inside the academy. When Russell didn't follow, the 2 following from the left and right of the 3 who went to the bathroom earlier turned to Russell and shouted loudly, suddenly brought to his senses by the voice. Russell slowly shook his head. For now, the priority was to finish the problem with those 3. Whether there is a mission or not, whether there is a reward or not, because I was determined not to live like before. And that's for today. See you in next video. Make sure to subscribe and like the video. Thank you.